Hello everyone, welcome back to the Zekko Football channel. Everton have had their points deduction reduced from 10 to 6. But what's most interesting is the narrative that is swayed around Everton and them being a relegation candidate, when actually, I think they're far from it. And this man, Sean Dyche, is actually doing a stellar job of turning around the fortunes of the Toffees. Today we're going to be talking about why Everton are much better than you think. If you are new to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe, you like the video, and you turn on those notifications so you don't miss what's coming up. But now, let's get into it. Sean Dyche's contribution towards Everton and his role in this Everton side isn't questionable for me, and I think he's doing an amazing job. But if you require a little bit more of a visual aid, allow me to give you this. This is a graph dictating Everton's XG and XG conceded over the last 3 years. It includes times in which the managers have changed and the changes of the season. And I think it's really interesting to see the difference between each and every coach. So for example, this is Carlo Ancelotti before he left Everton to go to Real Madrid. The season, of course, ends here, but also Rafa Benitez came in. And as you can see already from this point, we can see that the XG that Everton have is being far outweighed by the XG conceded in terms of conceding more goals, conceding more chances, and not creating anywhere near enough. This levels out around about the start of the season, but it starts to go haywire once more. We can see Rafa Benitez really starting to concede a load of chances, and Everton are nowhere near the amount of XG that they need to be. Again, a managerial change happens. An interim comes in and then enters the mighty Frank Lampard. He really started to try and get things rolling once more, but his XG ended up dropping that little bit further. He lowered the XG for their season as well, though, keeping them in the Premier League, of course, making sure they were difficult to beat, and that's where it tailed off. But towards the rest of the next season, following, he really struggled to stop that XG from really creeping back up, and again, he started to falter. They started to score and get less chances, equaling in a bigger difference between the XG and the XG conceded. A managerial change was had yet again, and Sean Dyche comes in. Now, this for me is an absolute pivotal point in Everton's essentially life cycle, because we all know that Everton are not doing great. They're not in the point of the table that they want to be, but I think the appointment of Sean Dyche is nothing short of fantastic, and it's clearly shown in this graph. So we can see that the XG is currently here, but there's a trend. There's a trend of it just bucking and going upwards. It's just starting to go. And again, the XG conceded is being lowered. Yes, it's getting a little bit higher in points, but generally the trend is a little bit better. And for the first time in this entire 3-year cycle, at the start or towards just the beginning of the new season, which is here, Everton finally have higher XG than they do XG conceded. I will reiterate this for the first time in 3 years. This is remarkable for me, and the only person or the only set of people that I think you can give credit for of this is Sean Dyche and his coaching staff, who are doing a brilliant job, I think, of making sure they have higher XG than their XG conceded. And it just means that they have a much better chance of winning matches. Superb stuff. Everton's formation is based around an adaptation that Sean Dyche used at Burnley. Instead of it being a 4-4-2, it ended up turning into a 4-4-1-1. And what this allows Everton to do in particular is to drop an extra forward player into a more midfield role. This allows him to come and join in on the defence and keep them that little bit more compact. As you can see, 2 banks of 4 surround Everton's main 4 at the back formation, and it makes sure that they're a little bit more compact. That's one of the main tactical tweaks that comes into this Everton side, is how compact the 2 banks of 4 actually are. The distance between the centre backs and the centre midfielders are really tight, and the same goes for the wide players and the full backs. Another thing to really note is the tandem in which the fullbacks and the wide players play together, making sure that they have 2v1 situations, and defensively they're really, really close and tight together. This stops off the passing lanes through in between these two banks of four, and it makes it that little bit more difficult to play through. Defending the V has always been a Sean Dyche philosophy, and this allows them to stay that little bit more compact, flooding the penalty area whenever they don't have the ball, and whether it's on one side, making sure that they're able to come out to combat whenever it needs and suits. And it allows Everton to be that little bit more defensively solid. In fact, Everton have the 4th best defensive record in the Premier League, and I think if I'd have told you that a couple of weeks ago, you might not have believed me. But in a defensive sense, they are a very, very well organised, well orchestrated outfit. And then going forwards, they look to wide areas to try and make sure that they're able to get crosses into the box. Everton actually lead the Premier League in terms of the amount of crosses they actually put into the penalty area, utilising the real physicality of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, or even an Abdoulaye Doucouré whenever he enters the box with those late man runs. It allows Everton to not only get a couple more players up the pitch, but again, making sure that the main cohesive and defensive unit doesn't get altered all too much. Everton are actually leading in terms of long passes as well, passes over 40 yards. This makes sure that they're able to really hit the prowess of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, take the ball in, and then recycle it round to the wide areas, pushing them on and then getting those crosses into the box. It's a really direct way of thinking, but it also again makes sure that these 4 players are together, compact, tight, and it's using the player profiles of the likes of a Jared Branthwaite to be able to push the game a little bit higher. We've seen Everton recently really start to push and compress the lines in between the 2 banks of 4, and not only is this allowing them to really get a lot of momentum in the match, but it also makes sure that, again, the passing lanes are just that little bit more difficult to find. You're not going to find players here because they're going to be converged upon that little bit easier. Players are able to really suffocate the game and make sure it's difficult to really play through Everton. They're going to need to go down the flanks or even play over the top. Occasionally you're going to see them play through like Manchester City did, but generally Everton have a very good organised shape that allows them to be defensively solid first and foremost. This is highlighted really well with Everton's recent game against Tottenham. The game finished 2-2, but I want to really focus on the player positions that Everton actually took up during this game. Here we have them in position, and if you see the attacking momentum of the game, it's going from top to bottom, from north to south, and actually the high line that Everton played is based around the player profile of Jared Branthwaite, of James Tarkowski, and their abilities to really transition back towards their own goal. We know that Tottenham like to play high possession based football, but if they're not able to do it because of the stifling and really of the suffocating of Everton's entire midfield, entire side, it makes it that little bit more difficult to play through. If you see the lines between the centre backs and the centre midfielders creating that box, but not only doing that, but also making sure that there are no passing lanes in between the entire side as a whole, it just makes it that little bit more difficult for Tottenham, but also other teams to really play through Everton. I was really impressed with the way they defended it in this game, even though they gave away a couple of goals. It wasn't down to the way the team was tactically set up, utilising the wide area to be able to come inside to really create that compactness, that narrowness, and just making sure that little bit more difficult to break down. Everton are a really well organised side, and it's a real testament to the way that Sean Dyche and his coaching staff have been working with the players that they've been able to get so many good results. And good results are exactly what Everton are getting, especially away from home. They rank 7th in the Premier League for away results and away form, gaining 18 points in the process from 13 matches. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you compare it to some of the teams that are above them, Tottenham have 20. That's only 2 points difference. Aston Villa only have a 3-point difference. These are some really important and big sides, and Everton being in amongst this is really impressive. They have a better away form than Wolves do, than Chelsea, West Ham, Brighton. Some of these teams are really, really good, and Wolves have been talked about as one of the most up-and-coming sides. Chelsea have one of the best assembled squads in the Premier League, and then you look at the likes of Brighton, who are apparently really, really well coached. They are, of course, but I think Everton get overlooked quite a lot. And then you've got Newcastle down in 14th, really languishing down in 14th, whereas Everton have really managed to pump themselves up and get themselves a really good run of form. Impressive stuff. Everton's defensive approach and tactical setup is really paying dividends. especially when you look at some of these numbers. Everton are the second highest for tackles per game. That's 20 per match. That's a crazy amount. And it's down to the real shaving down of the lines, the compression, the making sure that they're able to stop and suffocate the play and break down those passing lanes for the opposition. This is also highlighted with interceptions. Everton have the second highest interceptions per game with 10.3, only bettered by Fulham with 11.3. Again, the closing down of the space, the making sure that they're compact and defensively orientated first, and then looking to be able to go and score goals. And scoring goals is exactly what Everton are doing as well. They rank second highest for set pieces with 15 goals this season. That is incredibly impressive, and if you compare that to their 12 goals of open play, you know where Everton are putting a lot of their emphasis, utilising the power of a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, utilising the power of a Jared Branthwaite, of a James Tarkowski, being able to move players forward, an Amadou Onana, and then being able to cross the ball in using either an Ashley Young, a Jack Harrison, or the like, or a Dwight McNeil, who has 5 assists this season. A lot of these players are being utilised to their fullest and using their best aspects to be able to allow them to go forwards. Sean Dyche is doing a brilliant job, and I put it down to him and his coaching staff to be able to get the best out of this group of Everton players. All of this culminates in the fact that Everton are actually a pretty good side. Yes, they sit in 15th with 25 points, but give them their 6 points back, and they actually sit in 13th. A total of 11 points away from the drop zone, and that's nowhere near the drop zone. So they are doing okay on their own merit this season. They're actually a pretty good side and well worth staying in the Premier League. So the next time you hear the word Everton, just remember, they're better than a lot of people give them credit for. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.